Hey friends, what you're about to hear is a conversation with Wrel. He's the lead designer of a game called Planetside 2, an MMO first person shooter set in a sci fi world that debuted in 2012 and in 2022 is still going strong. This will be Rel's third appearance on the podcast. The first time around, we talked all about how he went from being a Planetside creator to a Planetside developer, and all the way to being Planetside 2's lead developer in only a few years. Earlier this year, I asked Rel about the island continent of Osher, Planetside's first new major play space in over 7 years, and learned about his big picture vision for 2022 and the future of Planetside. This time around, we're talking Outfit Wars. Outfit Wars is Planetside 2's premier competitive event that pits outfit versus outfit in a 48 versus 48 player conflict over the frozen Nexus subcontinent that's half chess match and half deathmatch. I've had the good fortune to be able to cast this season's Outfit Wars and the great pleasure of seeing a competition, a community, and a developer all come together to deliver what many have wanted from Planetside from the very beginning: a chance at glory and bragging rights. In addition to Outfit Wars, Rel and I also chatted about life as a game dev, how to read between the lines of community feedback, the everyday Planetside debate of whether or not to kill spawn points, and some of Rel's hottest personal takes on the game and its community. As a final note, for those of you who aren't big fans of Rel, I get it. Being a Planetside fan has been really difficult at times. The game is 10 years old. Nobody's gotten here without scars, and we all want someone to blame. To those of you who are arriving at this conversation primed to seek out the flaws in Rel's arguments, I encourage you to carry on. Not because he deserves it, but because it's what I'm sure Rel wants. I've had the great privilege of getting to know Rel over the years, and I can confirm that he's just as human and fallible as any of us. But what makes him remarkable, in my eyes, and to borrow a phrase, isn't how hard he hits, but how hard he can get hit and keep moving forward. So thank you, Rel, for talking to me, for talking to us, for fighting for Planetside, and for making our community your priority. This is the Deeg podcast, and I hope you enjoy it. And now, here's Rel. Rel, what's up, brother?
Not too much. I'm
I just
all
have,
good.
okay, I'm glad to hear that. I have some questions. I'm a planet man, and I want to know, why is Outfit Wars important for a game like Planetside?
Well, we're just gonna let's jump right into it.
Damn straight.
All right. So taking on the topic of Outfit Wars, I think that Outfit Wars is uh important for our most veteran players. Um, to be sure, there's been we're going on 10 years now of the game being out, and the goals have since, or like up to this point, kind of been set by the players themselves. Like you have to kind of make your own fun inside the sandbox,
Kind of sandboxy.
right? And one thing that has been asked for over the years is a sort of kind of a competitive format for the game, or I mean, even if you step it back just a little bit, something to fight for. And I think that Outfit Wars in itself creates a lot of community goals. So one thing about Planetside 2 is that we have great outfits, well, guilds in most games,
Mm-hmm,
but outfits
mm-hmm,
in ours
mm-hmm.
that are communities of members led by sometimes like an infectious personality. Other times it's a bunch of players just with a just like-minded, kind of moving toward the same objective, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a really cool thing. So Outfit Wars, I feel like, gives those sorts of players the ability to, I guess, like prove themselves, to some degree, to kind of be
Yeah.
motivated by something beyond just like unlocks or more tangible rewards.
Sure,
Because there's something
sure.
to be said about like
More
the
quantifiable.
feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The bragging rights is more important than I think is given credit for
Oh,
a
it's
lot of
so
times.
important. So
Or
important. People are fighting over that every single day on Araxis, man. That's my perception of it. Every
that's a good
single
point.
one-on-one, like it boils all the way down to the simple one-on-one interactions. Like, oh, can't believe that guy got me and he used a freaking shotgun. What an asshole. You know, like these things are important. And we recognize when people behave ethically in that realm, when they don't behave ethically. We have debates about what the best etiquette to engage in this sandbox looks like. You don't get that in a place where players' decisions don't matter. And I think it's cool.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point because there is this sort of like these undertones in the background, just of like you when you see somebody's name that you recognize,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, that's a good player, right? There's value in sort of the reputation that you cultivate
Yeah.
by virtue of playing, this very social experience.
Hmm.
But aside from the sandbox, like you said, kind of like you're not being directed to do one thing or the next. The I mean, there's alerts which are
Yeah.
they're an objective, and they do give you like a satisfying end goal or like a conclusion at the end of a match. But I think for outfit wars in particular, the everybody is intending to there's like a social contract where everybody knows that this is the way that we need to play, because
Hmm.
it's unlike the sandbox where it's just like, oh, it's alert time and there is a goal. Players generally pull toward it. You don't need to,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So this it's a totally different spirit, and I think one that has value not only from just the self sort of promotion and just that social back and forth and the bragging rights or whatnot, but also it's something that players can rally behind.
Mm.
When you see your friends up on screen, by due to the great work of casters. Actually, you had a lot of fun casting the event.
Yeah. I've
You
been
told
loving
me
it, man.
last weekend. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. I think that's something that the community can kind of like celebrate in without the need for developer assistance.
Hmm.
It's sort of like a community building element that's kind of just been given the framework
Hmm.
in the game.
Yeah, which seems to be sort of a foundational element of Planetside in general. It's like here's the space for a fun time. Go make of it what you will.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, we're 2 weeks into the qualifiers for the Nexus season of Outfit Wars. What do you think players have been making of it so far?
There's certainly some rough edges to be rounded out on the development side, in
Mm.
particular. The first outfit wars was, or the first weekend rather, was especially difficult to cast because the HUD indicators were kind of jacked up, and
Yeah.
everybody had some growing pains there. I think for the most part that's sorted out now, though there's
Hmm.
still some remaining issues that need to be tied up. Um, but when I talk to people who are participating in Nexus, they're having fun. It's a new, unique experience. Everybody's trying to figure out what the meta is going to be.
Hmm.
Seen a couple of different openers, you know, um, with either galaxies or just all ESF or whatever balance or
Yeah. Yeah.
steal rain onto a particular
Oh, that's my
base, just so
favorite.
that you,
It's
yeah,
such a YOLO
yeah.
move, but it's so fun to watch.
No, I didn't see it until the second weekend, which
Uh-huh.
maybe I just missed when other people are doing it. But
That's the one I saw.
that,
I think it was
yeah,
Go Hard Gaming against Recursion. They did it,
mhm,
and they just are like going hard.
yeah, that stuff is really cool. And I think that there's a level of play that is only it's mostly absent from the majority of the sandbox outside of uh, the very end of alerts. So like
Hmm.
at the strategic level, you're kind of playing the alert timers and figuring out what bases need to be captured,
Hmm.
or which ones are off the clock. But a lot of the times you're kind of reliant on other platoons or just other outfits, and kind of like you're hoping that they're pulling toward the same objective.
Right.
But you distill that now in Nexus, and it's like you have control of the entirety of how
Right.
this is going to go
Hmm.
from your side. So the just the nuance between all the timers and how to fake people out that you're going for a base, where to distribute resources. All of
Yeah.
that is incredibly. I think it has a high skill at a community level instead of just like
Hmm.
a just an individual level,
Hmm.
and that to me is just like a super cool thing that I think players, veteran players who have been around for a long time, or just really enjoy the competitive side of gameplay, like our Jaeger participants and those sorts of things.
Right.
I think those players are really having a good time with a certain or this particular format.
Yeah. That's been my perception. It's been really, really fun to watch and to cast too, as you mentioned. Um, and one of the things I think I've noticed too, I'm listening very, very closely for not just what the like the handful of really high powered outfits we can think of that are likely to get into the playoffs and get into the final rounds, but also some of the other outfits. Like what are they thinking? Um, and are they having a good time? We've definitely seen some stomps, especially in the first one, although we have seen some amazing, very even matches between some of those outfits. Um, and it kind of brings to mind the question of um, why is head to head, what we're doing now in the Nexus season, 1v1, better format than the old 1v1v1 we had on Desolation in previous Outfit Wars? Why is it better?
So better for some things, worse for others.
Hmm.
I think that in when it comes to what makes Planetside, a lot of people can kind of align that with the three faction large scale gameplay, which I
Mm-hmm.
do believe that our first few rounds of Outfit Wars were kind of exemplifying.
Mm-hmm.
Construction was a thing, despite all the bases being the same, donut bases there on Desolation. The ability to kind of like move around the map was a little bit more fluid,
Yeah.
I would say, and then the strategies differed by a larger amount as well. I think if you were like good at construction, that would. I mean, typically that doesn't really have a niche in the live gameplay, but does have a niche in that sort of competitive space.
Right. Right.
With new format, got rid of it. Well, rather,
Right.
just didn't add it. Nexus really isn't set up to partake in that
Yeah,
particular
it's pretty
style of
locked
gameplay.
down in terms of where the play spaces are,
Right. Yeah.
except for like the
It was
warp gates.
developed. Yeah. Yeah. That last base is a little bit more
Yeah.
open.
Yeah.
But for the most part, right. Very kind of choky, windy routes to bases. Air superiority matters a lot, as it does in every Outfit Wars to date.
Hmm.
But the ground vehicle game is a little bit more, actually a lot more absent, I would say, than on Desolation, just because of the lack of openness of space.
Yeah.
So to that end, um, less there are aspects of it that are less intriguing, I would say, and kind of even move away from some skillful elements and kind of like focuses on other aspects of the game.
Would you say less
Uh,
complex?
Certainly less complex.
Okay.
Yeah, just by virtue of stripping away some of the potential avenues that you can use to participate
Right.
or take advantage of. Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely less complex.
The
Don't think it's
lattice game
less
is way less complicated when you only have two actors. Um, it just it's easier to understand what's happening.
right. To that end, though, the format is, I would say, better overall. When you're fighting against one faction, it removes the possibility for it was referred to a lot as king making in
Mm.
the previous season of Outfit Wars,
Hmm.
where players would or teams rather would compete for second place, and the way that you do that is by making sure that you can gang up against one outfit so that you ensure a loss.
Sure.
That's not it's not what we were looking for as far as the spirit
Mm.
of competition was concerned.
Hmm. Not
When
very
all those
sportsmanlike.
players exactly
Okay.
when all players were pulling toward the same objective, then it created really interesting matches. It was very fun to watch. Lots of really close matches there at the end. But as unfortunately the game mode's flaws were further emphasized by the players who were taking advantage of that format,
Hmm.
it became clear that if we wanted to bring Outfit Wars back, it would need to be in a new format.
Okay.
I do think that there's ways to make things a little bit better
Hmm.
to that respect, in the 1v1v1 format. However, working on Outfit Wars in general is a massive investment of
Mm.
resources.
Mm-hmm.
So didn't really make sense to kind of sort of hope that we fix a problem, in the 1v1v1 format,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and attempt it that way. It made more sense for us to move back to something that, we knew could work. We
Mm-hmm.
removed the possibility of those really detrimental, mechanics, and then hopefully find a foundation to build off of now that we're at a baseline. Hopefully we're at a
Mm-hmm.
baseline. I don't know. We'll see how this Outfit Wars unfolds, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, I've been really enjoying it. I haven't been playing, although I had the option to do so. I decided that casting was a better contribution from me. Also, probably a little more fun, if I'm totally honest. It's just such a hoot, connecting with all the whole community and showcasing what people can do, and trying to make a really great experience out of it for all the people who really want to see their game on platforms like YouTube and Twitch, and don't always get a chance to see the best of it highlighted. So it's pretty exciting. I think there's a matchup coming up this weekend. As we're speaking, it's just between weeks 2 and 3 of the qualifying rounds, and we're seeing on the Emerald server what looks like it may be like sort of a almost maybe a championship round preview, where on Emerald, Goblin Jumpers are taking on Recursion. A really high powered match. I think a lot of people are going to be watching to see how that unfolds. Makes me think of like pitchers in baseball. Uh, in order to get through an entire game, you have to get every single player in the enemy lineup out 3 times. Nine batters times 3 outs per inning, 9 innings, right? And a lot of times, a starting pitcher will have one approach the first time through the order, all 9 batters, and then the second time through the order, they'll change something. They'll bring in a new pitch that they hadn't thrown at all since the start of the game. And I'm hoping to see from Recursion and Goblin Jumpers like a little bit of not just diversionary play within the match, but diversionary play within the outfit war, where they kind of leave some of their trump cards kind of in the deck, um, before
that'd
they may
be
face each other again.
that's interesting. I wonder how many outfits actually have that.
Yeah,
Just like change up their style of play to such a degree that it totally throws somebody off. I would be very interested
that's the kind of
to know
stuff that,
if
yeah, it excites me, that possibility.
that's cool. Yeah, if
Yeah,
you do come across any of those matches, please let me know so I can rewatch them.
I'll have to do
That's
the retroactive analysis at the end of the season. Yeah. Anyway, so with all this, I can't. I might have actually just even used this word a little bit ago, but hot, kind of a loaded term. Would you say Outfit Wars is competitive?
semi-competitive,
What does that mean?
pseudo-competitive.
What does
Yeah,
that mean?
yeah. So I mean, last Outfit Wars, because of the way that I feel like it was because of the way that it was being conveyed via, the people who were casting the events, and or just speaking their piece kind of on the event. Competitive as a term was a little bit distorted beyond what our intention of that the term means. Sometimes people think, and actually Planetside, who has a history way way back of trying to, or at least dipping their toes into like esports water.
Yeah.
So I think when people see that term, it is something that kind of jumps to mind. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but that's not our intention. Like competitive just means that it is something that you are competing for. There's a set of rules, there is a win condition, and there's a limited amount of winners.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the spirit of play that we were going for. So I kind of made it a point to avoid the term, competitive or even competition. Like you'll
Yeah.
see, in a lot of like articles and that sort of thing, we have referred to it as an event or a tournament, deliberately to avoid that word. I don't think it's just based on kind of the feedback that I've seen. I don't think that, the same sort of mentality is present this year.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we're good. People kind of get it, after having run through the events a few times.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was definitely something that we contended with among plenty of other drama.
Yeah.
Plenty of other drama.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Especially reflecting back on the prior outfit wars and the king making stuff that happened. Like, I tend to, in my heart of heart, like when I'm sitting outside the game or like when I'm taking a break from it, and when I'm reflecting back on Planetside, like I kind of love the king making stuff that happens in live, like in the live sandbox during alerts. Like, I kind of love that shit. It kind of makes the game it kind of makes Planetside Planetside, and I understand people when they if they look back at Desolation and think, oh well, we had Planetside before, why are we getting away from that? I think you made the argument, and I agree with you, why it made sense to move on to a 1v1 format. I am sympathetic though to people who prefer the old, and I think maybe just to kind of posit a thought, like it feels healthier to me as an enjoyer of Planetside to have a differently textured experience. Like Outfit Wars is different than live. And yeah, you need to kind of people need to get used to it. They need to kind of understand it and decide how they engage with it differently than they engage with live. Um, but that intuitively feels like a healthy thing to have a different offering.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that because of the style of play that Outfit Wars is most conducive to, it brings out uh, different maybe personalities. Certainly, different people have like more of an interest in certain types of
Hmm.
gameplay than others. And yeah, I would say it's certainly healthy, and but at the same time, not for everyone.
Hmm. That's actually a question that I have for you. But before I get there, I'm going to ask a couple more. Um, an outfit war is played by two outfits at platoon strength, which is four squads of 12, 48 players. Why is 48 players the right team size for outfit wars?
So, firstly, I don't know that it is. Um, just to start, but it is something that is, I mean, it goes back to last year as well, but it is most representative of the Planetside experience. Like
Mm,
people connect Planetside to scale, as well as the three faction combat, as well as combined arms. Those
hmm.
are kind of the three main, um, just unique selling points of this particular game.
Right.
And the so we try or are trying to keep the experience kind of as large as possible, while also making sure that there's enough players to compete. I'm sure there's plenty of people who would love, a 24 versus 24, or like a 12 versus 12, or like even a 6 versus
Sure.
6. And
Sure.
those things are all possible,
Hmm.
later on down the line, but we again need to establish a baseline. Um, and I think that Nexus in particular functions well with 48 versus 48.
Hmm.
Uh, I almost want to see more on the map, so that there's
Interesting.
constantly kind of like fighting in different locations.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a I mean, and that's a possibility for the future too. But how many
Mm.
outfits can partake in
Yeah. That's a
an
thing too.
experience that's
Right.
larger? So it's a balancing act, for sure. And I think that one of the determining factors of whether or not we go larger or smaller is the interest, and also the weight against the burnout, because it is difficult for any outfit to coordinate and ask for 48 players to sacrifice a couple hours of their time at a specific time. Um, and very very few outfits, I would say, can do that at at like a constant. So
Yeah.
we're seeing what shakes out.
Mm. I'll be eager to see what does shake out. I'm talking to a lot of people in the community about outfit wars, and one of the questions I ask people is, how often would you like to do this? Would you like to do it once a year, twice a year, four times a year? What's your appetite like? And usually people start to get hesitant around twice a year. Like any more than that, I think people are like, "My God, how could we possibly? How could we possibly?" because the burden is so heavy on leaders to really put in a huge amount of time to rally their troops. I led molten core raids back in the early days of World of Warcraft, and that was way easier than this, and it sucked. um, so I sympathize with that, and also, so yeah, as a someone in my position where I'm mainly doing commentary and casting, I just want to see it more often, man, because while this is happening, the Planetside community shows up, right? Like you see faces you don't usually see. Um, and yeah, it can have an effect on live sandbox gameplay that can be a little hostile to solo or small squad players, which I usually find myself in when I'm playing Planetside. But it feels makes you feel sort of proud of the scene and of the game that the scene is embedded with.
Yeah, I dig that. Uh, Watching players like cheer for one another,
Mhm.
or just even like kind of just the back and forth of people rooting for one team over the other,
Yeah.
or seeing an upset. You know, when
Yes.
things look sealed, it's exciting. Just as a an observer, definitely it definitely feels like community building, and I think that outside of the Jaeger events,
Mhm.
um, and server smash and lane smash and
Mhm.
just those great events. We don't really have that. It's not
Mhm.
like built into the game. So
Mhm.
hopefully this is something that I feel like will gauge the burnout. Like you said, people start getting hesitant,
Yeah.
but I could
You gotta
even
keep those
see
leaders excited to come back, because if they don't.
right. Yeah, that's another thing too. I do think that there's space for like show matches and stuff.
Mm,
If the commitment was less extreme and a little bit more, I would say like lighthearted, then you could probably get some similar vibes, kind of just throughout the
sure.
year without the same sort of commitment.
Mhm.
So I'd be personally interested in seeing that sort of thing too. And it gives you the opportunity to really, up the scale if
Mhm.
if there are fewer players or fewer outfits who are willing to compete, totally fine. Just do like a show match between,
Mhm.
some of the largest outfits, and then everybody can have their backs and stuff too.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the a few leaders I talked with have communities that are very active in the Jaeger scene. Anyone who doesn't know what Jaeger is, it's like a special event server. The community uses it to set up um, lane smash, where two outfits kind of do similar to what they do on Nexus, but instead of having a lattice, they just go down one lane of bases and they smash. Uh, but one of the things about this is such a small, stupid thing, man. But I think one of the things that make that Outfit Wars has as an edge on the Jaeger stuff, and I know people are using their live characters where maybe they have a ton of, like maybe they have everything, or maybe they have nothing because they had to roll in a new server a month ahead of time, or whatever the case is. But you see the names of the players. And when you're watching these Jaeger events, I mean, there's people who have named accounts, but for the most part, it's, PSBX042X hashtag Z49. It's just like, who's this guy? Why should I care about him? But instead, when you see, oh, here's Medieval Welder from Recursion, I know who that is. Like that's a very different story to tell as a caster, and I think as someone watching it, I guess I'm excited about the spectatability uh, quite a lot now that I hear myself talk about it.
Yeah, I hope that continues to hold up too. Nexus is still really fresh for everybody.
Mhm.
The casting experience, I feel like um, just watching these matches and kind of knowing the nature of Nexus, how there's a lot of tighter spaces and a lot of the combat takes place indoors.
Mhm.
It is more difficult to cast, I would say.
Mm.
At least that's my take on it. Obviously, I am not casting the
Mhm.
events, but just the maneuvering from one base to the next. Uh, it takes a little bit more work, and anytime you're kind of interrupting that flow, you kind of have to like reset and start over and then figure out the story that's happening at this base, right? Like if
Sure.
you move from one to the next. Where on Desolation, I think that you can kind of like just functionally you can view things from further away. You
Hmm.
can kind of get an understanding of the story as you approach the
Get a
base in
snapshot.
an observer
Yeah.
cam. Exactly. And I think that actually, even because or the bases are simpler too. So
Very.
because of that, like when people are inside, outside, you kind of have an expectation for how things will play out.
Yeah.
And I think that some of that simplicity actually bodes well for casting
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
that sort of experience. Maybe there's some rose-colored glasses, going
Sure.
on. I
Sure.
don't know, but we'll see how players kind of take to it over the
Definitely.
next 5 weeks, 5 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. Whatever. We'll see.
Yeah, we're going into the third now, so
And
7 weeks
people
total.
people won't be seeing this immediately, so this will be very confusing back and forth for them. But you were mentioning how the donut bases are more spectatable, which I agree. I agree with. You can just kind of fly over the top of them, and you instantly know what's going on at the point, who holds it, and what's going on, like quickly. One of the strengths, though, just to give you a kind of a devil's advocate counter argument for Nexus that I love, is that the bases are all individually identifiable. Now, yes, there's the home and away bases are mirrored, so Argent Hold is the same as Slake Canyon. But it's easy to go to Bitter Gorge, and people know you're at Bitter Gorge. They know where you are, and also they know how Bitter Gorge fights tend to play out, and they're different than fights over at Arazek Satcom Hub. And I don't know. I think that makes it more interesting to watch, and um, I feel like sort of that I get more excited to see what outfits will do at each individual base because there's not a one size fits all. It's not like you just drop people on the relic point and you move people around and they redeploy and they drop in, and which is exciting and fun, like high octane, but it's a little monochromatic at times. And it's like, "Wait, there's a Sunderer over there?" Like I see it that happens all the time on Nexus. It's like, what the heck is that spawn point doing there? Or they got a beacon where? And it's just it has a little bit more variety.
Yeah, no, I could totally see that. And I think as the casters watch the more fights unfold at these bases, there would be a more common like go-to strategy that I think people will just
On
start to
meta.
pick up. Yeah, yeah. Just even just at each individual base to where maybe that hesitation won't be as visible. I think there's most folks are doing like an amazing job right now as is,
Uh-huh.
but that's yeah. I could definitely I would love to go back to Desolation at some point and
Huh.
change up the bases that are there. Just offer a little bit of variety because
Okay.
the donut bases it's a very simple design,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I don't know. I think there's definitely some argument to be had either way.
Yeah, I could see those rose tinted glasses. I could see
Maybe a
them.
little bit.
I could see them. Ah, well, Desolation was a good time too. Um, okay. So we just talked about like the 48 player team size for Outfit Wars, what that does to communities. Um, I think that kind of answers the question of who Outfit Wars is for. It's for the community players, for people who are coming together, social experience. Um, but I wonder if we could ask the opposite. Who is Outfit Wars not for?
I've seen a lot of just kind of whenever we talk about Alpha Wars, I'll see some subset of players bemoaning the high population size
Hmm.
or requirement rather,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine. Totally get it. There's a desire to operate at a smaller scale, less friction involved in doing so, easier to coordinate. All of that is totally valid, um, but that's later. Like can't have it now. Every kind of update has been baby steps toward hopefully something that's stable that we can kind of like just turn on and then it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
once we have that down, we're free to experiment with different sorts of formats and so on. But I would say that as far as the actual like player archetypes too,
Hmm.
I've seen plenty of players who are just disinterested in playing in Outfit Wars because there isn't construction, or because there isn't, more combined arms gameplay,
Hmm.
because of Nexus in particular, that this
Hmm.
new very infantry focused, well, and air, I guess, focused map. So it's, again, it's not for everybody, and I don't think anything in the game can be for everyone. You just
Yeah.
hear different sides of the argument,
Hmm.
regardless of
Hmm.
what decision you make.
Yeah, and it seemed like I can't stop talking about Desolation. Apparently, like that was sort of like a for everyone as much as possible. In terms of, like every gameplay style seemed to have a place there. And I wonder sometimes if that's part of what made it so divisive, because it wasn't narrowed down enough from the beginning for people to understand what to get out of it and easily arrive at a social contract. A word that I've heard you use, and I think totally does exist, and as well as what the other way to put it, which is the code of conduct, spoken or unspoken. What do you think the biggest issues facing outfit warriors in Planetside 2 is? And on the other side, what are the biggest issues facing players who have opted out from Outfit Wars? And I'm talking about as a Planetside player, high level.
Let's
Might be
see.
too broad of a question, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if I understand what you're asking, then maybe. So I'll say that there's a. We wanted to make sure not to drain the sandbox,
Mm,
of players, because that anytime you have an event like this that actively takes players away, the game becomes less fun for those who are, there, who are not participating.
mm-hmm.
So I'd say that this these events are just like, everything is kind of linked. Um, sometimes in Planetside 2, the cost of, or like fun for one person comes at the cost of another,
Yeah,
and I think to
usually,
some
I think.
degree, yeah, yeah. I guess it depends on which side of the tank cannon you're on.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that's probably kind of a shared burden, but I guess mostly lays on those who don't participate in Natural Wars. And then there's also
Mm-hmm.
some like feeling I'm missing out stuff, or maybe even just like the tangible rewards, like, oh, that's a cool reward. I wish I could, get that sort of
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
Um, it's always a little bit tricky, how much you want to externally motivate players versus
Yeah.
you know kind of like, well, intrinsically motivate them, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But and the outfit war players themselves, I feel like I Nexus is very new right now. I hope that it continues to be interesting throughout the entirety of the outfit wars. I do feel like there, we spoke about some of the advantages and disadvantages
Mm-hmm.
of Nexus versus Desolation, and I'd be interested to know kind of like what this format yields as far as disinterest.
Mm.
How quickly do players burn out on it? How quickly is a meta determined,
Mm-hmm.
and just does it become unfun to play against it once the
Right.
optimal strategy is discovered? Because those sorts of things mean that either we as developers need to keep shaking up the experience to make it so you're constantly learning, or well, or you suffer through it and then hope that there's enough engagement and like a burnout to keep it going. But
Mm.
all these sorts of things we need to pay attention to and react to as is pertinent.
Yeah, definitely. That makes me want to ask you a bigger question that's not here on my list, and let me know if you want to answer it. Um, how much of the job that you do, lead designer, PlanetSide 2, is proactive, and how much of it is reactive, would you say?
I would say that the vast majority, is proactive,
Mm-hmm.
because in order to turn any sort of update around, it takes time, just to plan, execute, QA, and then, I mean, hopefully, you know uh, respond, or hopefully not have to do like day one hot fixes.
Hmm.
Yeah, after the fact.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, proactive in that regards. And even when it comes to kind of the planning, like we do that by uh, so we intend to do it by the year, to where like, okay, this is the year that's coming up. Here's all the things
Hmm.
that we want to do.
Hmm.
And then the reality sets in to where like, oh, life happens. So you need to kind of like readjust,
Right.
pivot, course correct, what have you. And that I would say is reactive, not necessarily to the players themselves, but to kind of the circumstances that we're beholden to in just developing the game.
Sure. Sure. Thinking about the year of content. Back in February this year, we had a conversation about the roadmap that y'all published for 2022, and you said, I think you said something like, "This is going to be the year that we get everything on the roadmap done." I wonder how you feel about that now, sitting here in
Man, it's not going to happen.
September. Um,
Yeah,
were you
no way.
foolish or were you hopeful back then?
I would certainly say that I'm always hopeful and also foolish
Hmm.
most of the
Okay.
time.
Okay.
But no, we definitely had the potential to get everything done. I think that we hit some roadblocks multiple times throughout the year, and maybe that's where the foolishness comes in. Is that rarely is there enough of an adequate anticipation of the unexpected. So when when team members have a life event that,
Hmm.
yeah, take time off. You handle your stuff. Life always is always first.
Yeah.
Um, that the repercussions are like, yeah, things slow down when an update needs multiple hot fixes that we're scrambling to take care of multiple times over. Yeah, things slow down. It has compounding impact like throughout the year, and that's why you'll see us pivot maybe a little bit too late. I would say sort of at the latter portion of the year.
Hmm.
Right now, we're trying to create space, obviously, as the letter
Yeah.
mentioned. But I also wonder. It's always a tricky place to be because there's like an expectation that is, you know, set in part by us with a roadmap saying like, okay, we're going to do all this cool stuff this year. But then there's also an expectation that the community has, and I'm unclear. This is the part that I'm still kind of like discovering, is how much we are expected to deliver in a year to maintain a constant cadence.
Hmm.
So if I mean I know I'm
You
talking a
mean in
lot
terms
here.
of the set expectations, or in terms of just like what's the right cadence for any kind of update? Like what are you saying?
I would say what is the general. I mean there is. So speaking of community expectation is like
Yeah.
that's everything's all across the board, right?
Yeah, of course.
But um, but I wonder what I guess I would say like the healthy volume of content would be for this game.
Uh-huh.
We have a level of ambition where it's just like, okay, we're gonna do awesome stuff. Just go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Uh-huh.
It's also super not fun when you're like caught on the tail end of it and like trying to play catch
Mm.
up, which is where we're at now.
Mm.
Um, but I released the roadmap at the start of this year, thinking just with internal expectations that like, oh, this isn't enough. Players aren't
Ah,
gonna like there's not like enough that's actually being done here that the players can like really hold on to. And then
okay.
when we revealed it publicly, it was like, oh wow, they're doing so much this year. This is awesome. I'm super excited about this. So my expectations for like need do more, be ambitious,
Mhm.
get after it, um, didn't align with at least the perception that the community was offering at the time.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely I would say like something that I'm learning more about is just figuring out kind of the right cadence.
Right. Right. I imagine it's complicated because you have a game where the main content anyone is consuming at any given time is other people. It's an entirely social game, PvP, cooperation. It's not like you're putting in a horde mode and you know how much people are going to want to play that. It's Did my friends log in tonight? Maybe that's more important than any other thing about Planetside 2, but whether I'm going to play it tonight. It certainly
Yeah.
figures into it for me.
No, I'd say for many people, for sure. That's a sentiment that's echoed. I mean, you can look on Reddit right now and see posts about people, saying that, oh, late night is not fun. This is awful.
Late Night
And
Emerald
it's
is wild, man. It is wild. I don't know about the other
wild how.
servers because people from all over the world are connecting to it, and you see a Planetside cultural melting pot that you don't see, I think, anywhere else in the game. I mean, it can make some big-ish fights at times, but it's a lot of the interactions just because of like ping and stuff like that are like, what the hell? Uh, and also I think the different servers a lot of times host different play styles, and sometimes you see things that it, they don't feel like they came from Emerald, so it's a little different.
That's interesting. Um, yeah, something that you see a lot on, like, I can't remember if it's Miller or Cobalt or maybe both, but like
Hmm.
infiltrator play
Hmm.
with bolters way higher than like heavy assault play on
I
on
totally
Emerald.
see that at night. Totally see that at night, and
It's
that's
yeah,
early morning in that side of the world.
yeah. I wonder how much of it is. Yeah, no, the community culture I imagine dictates a lot, especially since like it is a sandbox. Do
Yeah,
whatever your heart, is telling you to
right.
do. Yeah, that's interesting for sure. But the so like our game is so unique in that the number of players playing determines like the number of players playing, to where like the game is
Hmm.
more fun when there's more fun, or like when there's more people to
Yeah,
have fun with, right?
yeah,
So you see the example of how things can kind of go the other direction with servers like Soltech, with servers like Conray, even,
hmm,
which is quite small.
mhm.
Um, and it's having to, let's say, design around that is one of the most challenging parts of Planetside 2. I mean, not that there's any shortage of them. Designing for three faction warfare is, or four now actually, is
Right.
difficult in itself. Just like the imagine releasing saying like, okay, you want to create a bunch of new weapons, but they're only for one faction.
Mhm.
Just like, well, you can't do that. So since we have four factions
Yeah.
now, we need to kind of like say, okay, well, here's the multiple months we're going to invest in for this one new weapon for each, equivalent
Right, like all the
faction.
anti-material rifles that just came out, and now all the tank guns. You can't just make a Vanu tank gun.
Right. Yeah, that sort of thing is some of those costs that aren't readily visible by the players.
Yeah,
So there's just like a lot of like secret costs and design considerations that you need to make, and that's part of the challenge, I would say, certainly, of
sure,
developing a game like this.
sure, sure. Yeah,
I
one
have
of the
no idea what the
many.
question was originally.
That's okay, I like where it went. I don't remember the question either. I'm sure it was a great one, though. As they all are. Um, okay, okay, so you touched on the September post about kind of taking a breather, reevaluating. What does that mean? What does that mean for PlanetSide 2 for the rest of 2022?
I would say the so creating space is is the term that I tend to use most often,
Mhm.
because you certainly want more room to develop, kind of let um, your updates sit for a little bit. We don't use the test servers as often as we should. I
Why
don't
is
think
that?
anybody has any delusions about that.
Can I ask
It's a
that?
timeline thing. Oh yeah, no, just it comes down to time.
Uh-huh.
When you have a so there's certain points that you want to release certain updates,
Mhm.
and you are, regardless of, like, this isn't an upper management thing. It's not. It's like we are fully in control of this. However, there are in order to have a successful update, it has to have a certain length of time to where you are talking about it with the community, so that
Hmm.
there is sort of anticipation, hype buildup, and then an eventual release of the content. Right.
Hmm.
Um, that cadence is super important. Uh, Actually, I'd say super important, despite not hitting it nearly as often as we should be. Uh, so that knowing that, we try to target specific days of the calendar month, or sometimes we need to kind of operate around if we have other departments of the company doing like back end infrastructure and that sort of thing. Just we
Sure.
need to operate around that, and it
Right.
compresses timetables whenever we miss something or whenever things aren't moving quickly
Right.
enough. And if that hype train is already in motion,
Mm.
sometimes you have no choice, or at least it feels as if you have no choice sometimes, than
Mm.
to deliver. And while the sentiment is typically, yeah, take your time, we don't mind it being pushed back. What I see reflected in the numbers is a different story.
Mm.
And that is something that, again, one of those kind of like behind the scenes decisions that, or like behind the scenes environmental factors
Sure.
that contribute to the update cadence. So to counter that, kind of need to just take a hit. And September is, and firstly, one that is that hit. We had intended for tank cannons to come out at this point. What day is it?
13.
They would be coming out tomorrow,
Hmm.
in an ideal world.
Got it.
However, there has not been enough time to like let those changes, I would say, soak. Not enough time to I wanted to try to like throw out some VS variants because there was some general dissatisfaction with just how boring the
Sure.
weapon is.
Yeah.
Just that sort of
I
thing.
heard
And
heard that.
yeah, having that room to iterate is something that you need to like create space for. Having room to just like react to sentiment um, is again something that you need to create space for, and it comes at cost.
Mm.
And that is a cost that the community is willing to accept, but the game needs to balance against, because you have
Yeah.
the needs of the community, the needs of the team, and then also the needs of the company
Sure.
to consider all at the same time.
That the anecdote you shared about people's verbal sentiments when it comes to, just release it when it's ready is are maybe in conflict with actual player behaviors is an interesting one for me. Um, I think there's this blog called Ask a Game Dev. I think they're anonymous. I haven't been able to figure out who they are, but they post a lot of great uh, let me tell gamers about how game dev actually works. You know, and one of the things that he wrote a blog about, or he or she wrote a blog about, was the 80-25 rule they use for for gamer populations, and it's something like this. Um, 80% of the people who play your game won't ever consume social media about it. They just play the game. Of the remaining 20% of social media consumers about your game, only 5% out of the bigger 100 will actually tell you what they think. They'll actually contribute to the social media conversation. So when you're hearing from people saying, um, take your time, it's maybe just from that 5%. Does that kind of slice reflect anything you've seen about this community?
I would say so. Maybe not those particular values, but it can't be that far off.
Uh-huh.
We only have like there's a finite number of people at least contributing on
You can
Reddit,
do the
so as
math
an
from
example.
Steam charts and like Reddit
Yeah,
comments, and like you could do the math.
for sure. Yeah, totally. Haven't, just full disclosure,
Hmm.
but that's jives for sure. It's always difficult to kind of distill um, feedback into what is noise, and then what is legitimate need
Right.
or desire. And that's certainly one of my more pressing jobs, I would say.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, here's the question I've written down that sounds a little bit like what you're talking about is about hot takes. And it's just, everyone loves a good hot take about Planetside 2. Let me tell you my favorite hot take at the moment, my favorite personal Biased hot take. Delete heavy assault. That's my hot take for Planetside 2. It needs to go.
I love that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. Uh, okay, okay, you want to hear my hot take?
Please.
Well, okay, so one of them, one of many of them.
Okay.
Um, I would say so. Just to riff off of that one in particular,
All right.
I th- I think that, and not to beat up on heavy assault more, but also
Okay.
yes
Please do
too,
though. I don't mind.
uh, um, is is that heavy assault is the most uh, guarded class when it comes to don't touch my playstyle, than any other.
Hmm.
And there is certainly a like a woe is me victim complex. I've
Mhm.
seen it rationalized in many different ways, like, oh no, you can't nerf heavy because the ecosystem, then you won't be able to fight vehicles and that sort
Sure.
of thing.
It's
What is the
treated as like the
majority of
1.0 value in the in the force multiplier universe by a lot of the community, especially people who
yeah
love playing heavy assault.
I so my I would be very interested in seeing the heavy assault be totally restructured. And at this point, I don't think he could really do it and
Yeah.
then also not make people cry at the same time. But it would be interesting to have the heavy assault be a class that protects from explosives. So, like, they activate their shield. Everybody's like just protected from vehicles specifically. And infantry
Mhm.
doesn't do nothing.
Hmm.
It's like there's no extra layer of health. That sort of thing. People had such a
More
many
active
opinions.
like defenses, more active support defenses instead of, the passive like shield kind of idea.
Right. I mean, the shield is active too, but it's mostly
It
used
is,
against
but
infantry, right?
yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah,
it's instinctual almost, just like, oh no, I actually have twice as much health as you. It's not twice as much.
yeah.
I have an extra layer of health. So
Right.
when these players lament the use of, okay, I don't want to target the players. I'm sorry.
Oh man, this is getting
When
good.
I hear a lamentation about nano weave, just as an example, it's just like,
Okay.
oh, this is killing the game. Uh, you know, just extra health. People are going to take it every time. Just like, what does that sound like? Oh, it sounds actually a lot like this other class that you have over here that can do that just for free.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, 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 no. Don't touch that. That's not the problem. It's this
Uh
other thing over here. Yeah,
uh
that sort of thing I see a lot. Um, so that's my hot take, at least one of them.
Okay, okay. Um so uh what other hot takes we got?
Oh no. Yeah, I probably had to think about it for at least a wee bit, but
What do you
I,
think
I
about
think
infiltrators? Give me your hot take on infiltrators. Go
infiltrators.
class
I
by
think.
class.
Oh, okay.
Why not?
Sure. Yeah, why not? That'd be fun. Infiltrators, I think, could stand to. So I don't have the same sort of opinion about infiltrator as I think many players who have problems with that class is. I
Invisible
think that
one
it's
shot kill class.
I think that it's fine to do that personally.
That's
I
the
do
thing.
think that it could be different. You can kind of take it or
Mm,
leave it.
mm.
Um, there is something to be said about kind of the okay. So how I would prefer to address the problem personally
Hmm.
is not an ideal way for in the eyes of many. Um,
So is this
s-
the perspective of Rel, the Planetside player, or of Rel, the Planetside developer? Is there a difference?
oh, that I think that it's mostly in the realm of a player,
Okay.
because I
Okay.
don't have an attachment to I don't have the same sort of attachment to classes that many people seem to.
Huh.
I'm very much like play whatever, do whatever. I think
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
some perception that I'm a light assault main, but that's totally not true. Look at my playtime; it's mostly on engineer.
Yeah.
I play
Yeah.
engineer as an assault class, and I
Yeah.
have always done that.
Mhm.
Uh, boggles my mind.
There's a perception
But
that you're a
the
light assault guy, though. You're right.
absolutely, yeah, no, and I love me some tribes for sure.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
have certainly made the light assault class more useful. I feel like in some situations over the years, but
I feel like from a lot of the same people who I'll go back to Infiltrator in a second. I love Light Assault. I feel like I hear the same people who defend Heavy Assault. I hear negative feedback about the Light Assault all the time, especially like Light Assault got impulse grenades. They shouldn't be able to warp around. That's bullshit. Integrity of my game. And I also hear things like rocket rifles. What the hell? They shouldn't be able to kill vehicles. Like they can fly. And of course, they've had C4 all this time, so I don't know. Um, and what do you think about that?
Oh, you want me to talk about the line assault, or do you want me to talk about infiltrating?
We can get back to Infiltrator. Let's talk about Light Assault.
Okay. Um. Oh wait, let's talk about light assault.
This is my podcast, after all. Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about Light Assault.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. So light assault, I feel like is a perfect class. Just kidding.
All
Uh,
according to script.
right. No, the conversation surrounding rocket rifle, I think, is a little bit interesting. Because there's a few issues I would say that people tend to take. The first is bail assault. So like you're flying an ESF and then you don't engage in the same Bushido as the person who is trying to gun you down.
Yeah,
Light assault bails
you don't
out
go
and
down
then
with the ship.
gets right. That's nobody has agreed to that contract.
Yeah.
Uh, or else they wouldn't be flying around like that.
Also, there's just
Um,
not that much air to air in the game, any sadly.
yeah, yeah, certainly.
Mm.
Actually, I kind of rebuke that perception too because I see
Okay.
error all the time. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think it's the same sort of like level of just like, oh yeah, no, highway to the danger zone. Dog fighting each other, and
Yeah, baby.
but maybe some of that's missing, and maybe some of that's what's desired. Most of the
Fair
time,
enough.
like I can turn on a stream and then see whoever just ripping around in the vehicle and like seeing plenty of vehicle gameplay, seeing plenty of be it air, ground, or
Yeah.
somewhere in between.
Yeah.
It's very present.
Yeah.
I do think that you have to look for it though,
Mm.
in most cases.
That was the thing that got me really
Um,
excited about Planetside 1 in the first place. I was like, okay, I can be infantry man in a persistent like MMO world. That's kind of cool. Oh shit, I can hop into a tank and someone else can drive it and I can gun it. That blew my mind, man. Blew my mind. Still blows my mind
that's
a little bit.
I really like that too. Yeah, I wish more folks would jump into passenger seats of vehicles, either as
Hmm.
transportation or on the gunner seat. It's a great experience for new players in particular, and I don't know, and just like relaxing a little bit. You
I
always feel
like
like
it
you're doing
too.
something
Yeah.
because you're getting the hit markers, and you see, there's a target over there. You don't have the fear of just instant death. At least, I
Yes.
mean, sometimes maybe if there's like a light assault, it'll
Yeah, or
surprise you,
tank
but that's
mines. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but that's a rarity compared to just the bulk of what
Right.
that gameplay
It's like
persists or
being
consists of.
infantry where your life can end literally any moment. It's a little more, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Um. So anyway, light assault.
Yeah, light assault. So
The
you were saying people there's an argument about people bailing out of and finishing off their air opponents with rocket rifles, which you're right. I could see how people wouldn't like that.
right, and then the next one is Sunderers. So this one is, I think, um, I don't think that taking away the rocket rifle is the way to address this particular problem. Light assault really has no functional team play value, which is why they were given like a rocket rifle in the first place, just so
Yeah.
that they could provide a little bit more support
Mhm.
to that end.
As an
Um,
assault class.
right, exactly. So basically, you have the trade off with heavy, bulky, less maneuverable, but a little bit of a meat shield, or you trade that for mobility, right? That's
Mhm.
kind of how it goes, and that's why the rocket rifle isn't like it is something that you need to get very close to your
Mhm.
enemies to use effectively.
Yeah.
Uh, so I mean, when it comes to the Sunderer nuking and that sort of thing, I think that there's ways to address that, but I don't think that they live in the realm of nerfing light assault necessarily.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Making Sunderer deployment shield stronger is one that's kind of been touted as a solution by many people over many years at this point,
Right.
and it'll only shift the goalposts, honestly, between the community conversation. Like you'll still see it and see Sunderers get destroyed, probably just as easy, even if you were
Yeah.
to bulk
Yeah.
that vehicle up.
I mean, for what it's worth, I tend to see this debate of kill the Sunderer or not kill the Sunderer. It's sort of at a hinge point in terms of the way people play Planetside. Um, and if that's what you're referring to, is that what you're referring to? When you talk about killing
Uh,
Sunderers?
I mean, yeah, killing Sunderers in general,
Yeah, in
because we
general.
know that it's needed as a spawn point.
Yeah,
So
kill the
many people view
fight,
that as taboo.
kill the fight, or so it's either play the map and destroy the spawn point, or play the fight and preserve the spawn point. That's the tension.
Right. Yeah. That definitely speaks to the two like main community mindsets
Hmm.
in this game, which is another fun and interesting design challenge. I don't say that sarcastically. I really enjoy trying to design around it. However, I do think that the majority of gameplay should be like, yeah, you should go try to win the map.
Hmm.
I do feel like that's the mentality that should win out, because realistically, the fights are going to end up in another spot on the map. They will naturally do that. The game is designed to do that. I think the spawn system has maybe thrown a little bit of a wrench into those plans lately, just with the population imbalances. But for the most part, this minor disruption in your gameplay, uh, for those players who specifically like to, they need their combat fix at every single moment. Uh, that is, I think
The
that,
people
that
here
maybe
for the
that's not
shooter
the.
part of Planetside, for the
I
first
think that's
person
not
shooter. That's the
right.
language I hear. I hear a lot of those gamers use, right or wrong.
No, that's correct. I see that within the community a lot.
Yeah,
However, I
yeah.
don't think that that's the experience that we need to slow down the tempo.
Mm.
That's my perspective. Maybe that's the hottest of hot takes.
Yeah, I think it might be actually. It takes me back to when we talked in February. Remember, I gave you my whole pitch about big planet side versus little planet side. You remember that? Yeah. So for people who weren't there, and by the way, go back and watch that conversation. It was a great conversation. Um, big planet side, play the map. Move squads around, color in the map your color, win the alert. Little planet side, enjoy the fight, frag out, pick a spot and be content. Stay in your biolab for the entire alert. Work on your headshots. Try a different infantry build than what you're used to. Maybe test out a different kind of heavy assault shield or an implant. Little planet side. And the tension between those two things is being important. Um, well, do you think the tension between those is important? Would you agree with that?
I, in an ideal situation,
Okay.
you would be playing the map and having your fun fights at the same time.
Okay. That sounds nice. Why can't we have that?
Creating, I don't think that you can't have that. I do think that you need to like wait for dessert. You know, if there's this
I like that actually. Say more.
yeah, so the mentality that just like, oh, there's no fights going on, and
There's no
these players
fights.
will
Yeah.
open the map and they'll see like all the blips and just like, oh, crap fight, crap fight, crap fight. Um,
Uh huh.
that alienates some of the essence of PlanetSide 2, in my opinion.
Mm.
So there is like a different kind of game that is meant to be played there.
Hmm.
When if you would actually kind of just like slow down a little bit and embrace the moving to the next base, the actual like creation of the fights, even
Yeah. Yeah.
um, the game would be better as a whole. Like, for well, I guess I can't speak to the players who really enjoy that sort of like nitty gritty play, but I do think that the just super intense infantry, I need to fight all the time or else the game sucks. Like that sort of mentality comes at cost to, I would say, the average player
Okay.
who is playing the map,
Yeah. Okay.
playing the planet side the way that it was kind of intended to be
You think that's
played.
the average PlanetSide player?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Is that like a
Yeah.
impression that's backed up by feedback, by data? Like where's that kind of come from?
So I would say that not hard data. I would actually I can't even say that. So like if you look at um just a map, just a map in PlanetSide 2,
Okay.
fights are generated right by someone. Somebody's
Hmm.
got to go starting there, and then everybody's got to kind of like jump in.
Yeah.
And if you do slow it down and watch, players move from one base to the next. They don't all redeploy. There is a
Right.
natural flow, and in most cases,
Okay.
there are some spaces where you'll see squads that are just like redeploying around the map and playing very intensely, and that's a kind of an
Yeah.
aspect of the game that totally exists. and they'll redeploy out, and then your population will,
As groups though, but
drop.
they're still
Right,
trying to color the map. They're just using redeploys like an air vehicle. It's just one of their tools.
right, and that to that degree, even like you said, they're playing the map, so they're optimizing the intended. I would say that they're optimizing the intended uh, gameplay. So they're taking the intended experience and then playing it at a higher level in that respect. They are
Okay,
playing a different game. They're not, just playing for the fights and just like, screw everything else, or just playing to get away from the tanks.
sure.
Um, yeah, this is
No, I
just very very hot take territory, but hopefully,
this is this is the good stuff
yeah.
though, man.
Does it make sense though? Like,
Yeah, I
you
get
think?
it. I get it. I actually have a retort for you in a second, but I want to share that I uh I played alongside Bushido Way for a little while. B Way, one of the top outfits on Emerald, a couple years ago. Really cool people, really skilled players. They take seriously playing the alert, and they take seriously individual skill. I think that they're one of the outfits out there that really embraces like for whom Outfit Wars is most for, because they take seriously the danger of making sure everyone individually is accountable and is playing at their best and contributing, and also the danger of making sure the group as a whole is oriented correctly to enjoy Planetside. And sometimes it's just like, okay, we're gonna all go here. We're gonna do this thing. We're gonna sit on the point and make sure no one else comes. We're gonna just pop dump this. Like that does happen. But also sometimes you're just like, okay, we're just gonna go frag out at this biolab for a little while. Like there's a little bit of both, a little bit of balance, a little bit of tension. Um, so I recognize that, and I tend to think that when you look at the broad spectrum of players who take on Planetside as a hobby, um, at the opposite, I think the opposite extremes tend to get most of the ink. Um, where it's like on the extreme you have the completely lone wolf solo infantry player who just wants their fights and doesn't play if there aren't any, and they're probably not going to make them, right? And the fallacy of the extreme plays in here, in that that is an extreme, but the truth is there aren't that many people who are that extreme about it. And the other extreme is I don't care about the fights. I'm just here to roll in my prowler down a lane with as many people as I possibly can, no matter what. Like that's I think that is an opposite extreme too. And somewhere in the middle is a reconciliation of those two qualities. I'm here for me versus I'm here for us. Now, that's just my philosophy. I'm just going to say that out loud because I feel like I want to. My podcast. Anyway, um, you said a few moments ago that you felt that players who, were in an organized fashion, were using redeploy to uh, play the map, were doing it right, and we're doing it the way a lot of other people's do. Maybe the way players in that prowler column do, but at a more intense level. They're optimizing more directly for the map outcome. Um, I think that's fair to say, and you said that that's okay. That's legit. Um, the point I wanted to make, and I'm not sure if I can eloquently connect it with what you said because we've said so much, is something about how is something about how. Oh, here's what it is. Sorry, had to fish. Got it now. The critique of the classic on the extreme solo infantry player who doesn't want to create fights. And you said how good it is, healthy it is for the player to decide to create fights. It's something that they should do. They should get into a Sunderer, move things around, join in a public squad, maybe jump in someone else's Sunderer, whatever that can look like, galaxy drop, stuff like that. Drop a beacon, whatever. Um, and I agree with that. And I think that I kind of put myself in the shoes of one of those extreme players, and I know a few. Um, And in my head, what I hear them saying back to me is, if you're going to ask me to play vehicles and play the map, then we should also ask, then we need to also ask the same quality of challenge to people on the other side of the spectrum, and don't allow them to sit in a vehicle 100% of the time, and treat force multipliers in a more balanced sense instead of treating them as like an enshrined play style. That's a critique that I hear. And I feel like it's almost exactly on the opposite point of the graph from the critique of, you shouldn't just go to fights, you should make fights.
Okay,
That make any
so I'll
sense?
it does, it does, though. I'll say that it maybe doesn't make sense to try to like unbudge the players who are playing the mini game. Like you said, extreme side of the spectrum over there. It Because those players obviously have something that they want to do. It just doesn't fit into what the game is intending that they do. Which is why I think that it comes at cost to some of the other gameplay elements. One of the So we do have a small vocal community, and the number of players who are very vocal to that end, just like the fights are garbage, need the constant acceleration of infantry only gameplay.
Mhm.
They That is sort of it's a very loud notion within a very small community,
Sure.
and it's a I mean I would say that there's mostly like a handful of people who take it to extremes,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think maybe that's where the kind of the detriment comes in. I don't know, maybe for the community as a whole, game as a whole. I don't know. I don't know. I'm still like I'm working through some things
Yeah.
in my head, but I would say that the force multiplier thing, like instead of treating it like an enshrine playstyle, I
Mhm.
think that was a decision that was made long ago. To where force multipliers in this game, like, you had two choices: make them more limited but more
Mhm.
powerful,
Mhm.
or at the very least less easy to destroy, or go the other
Okay.
direction where make it so they're more available, yet
Right.
make them easier to destroy.
Hmm.
That So that's the direction that we ultimately went, right? You see, everybody has the ability to pull force multipliers.
Mhm.
I think that with that being the case,
But they're not I win buttons.
no, they're not I win buttons. And in
Mhm.
fact, players complain about. Well, I mean, you see complaints on both sides of the fence,
Sure.
but there's definitely like a feeling from vehicle players, oftentimes, that like an infantry player charges at you, instead of running the other direction,
Mhm.
which
You should fear
is
me.
true, right? Because you should.
Yeah.
There's a reason that vehicles are intended to stay at like further distances from the bases.
One of my
So I think
favorite
that
things to
there's
do is in my light assault, load up with C4 and impulse grenades and hunt lightnings. I see them in the middle of the field. I run at them. They get excited, start going towards me, and then I impulse grenade, and they're like, "Oh shit, he's
right.
coming
There's
for
a
me."
panic.
Usually, I can't catch them because they can pivot faster than I can when I'm impulse surfing. But it's fun to
It's funny.
try.
Yeah. Uh, so on the topic of force multipliers, real quick
Yeah.
though, um, what if everybody used them?
Okay.
How different would the game be if everybody took every advantage that they could, the one that's being provided to them?
Hmm.
Would the game be, you know, um, more than, or do you think that infantry play, for the sake of infantry play, might be viewed as less acceptable,
Yeah. I
or
mean,
less?
that sounds like outfit wars to me. Like
Sure,
playing for every advantage. I think most people on live don't do that. I think it's the
right,
exception for live players, even during alerts, to play for advantage. Most people are like, "Here's what I want to do. How can I make it work?"
right. And then there's so when it comes to that, there's players tend to gravitate toward the path of least resistance, right?
Yep.
And a lot of times that is you're at a base, you're fighting, you die, you revive at the nearest spawn point, you keep jamming your face into the door just to get mowed down.
Yep.
Very rarely it's just like, very rarely is it, oh, I should pull up max suit so that I can be
Hmm.
some more survivable. Oh, I should speak to people and maybe get somebody to like repair me, or like, maybe we charge in at once. Friction. More difficult
Hmm.
to do that.
Yep.
Way easier to complain on Reddit. That's just
It's
that's
easy,
a hop
but
and a skip away.
I think most people who are victims of that situation don't actually post on Reddit. Like that's the
Oh, I don't know. I don't think that's true. How dare you?
all, all of them, every single one of them. They're your biggest fans, Rel.
Yeah. Um, but that's sort of the paradigm that I would like to see is I think that finding the fights and just living in that infantry play is it's good at doing what it does, but it comes at cost to kind of I would say the experience as a whole. And maybe even something like Insidious, where just the mentality of the community as a whole gets kind of contorted toward like, oh, the argument with like kill the Sunderers or don't kill the Sunderers. The fact that that is a decision that is now made within the community, punished for in some cases.
Yep.
Like, this person is, let's chastise them because they are, filthy Sunderer hunters or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
That's not good, right? We ideally, in an ideal world, we would all be pulling toward the same sorts of objectives. Outfit Wars, to that degree, it does that. Yeah, everybody's kind of moving to the same goal,
1v1.
right?
Short
Or
time
just
frame, compressed. Yeah, it's all compressed. Narrow expectations.
yeah, there's a winner, at the
There
end.
is a winner. Yeah, and a loser. This kind of reminds me of the things that I've heard you said about Desolation, um, and its defense, and especially around like the unspoken code of conduct. People should play to win. It's interesting to me because I shared with you earlier that I think that one of the greatest things about Planetside is the weird community interactions, like do or don't kill the Sunderer. Like I see that as a feature, not a bug. Um, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that play out in that specific way. There could be other things like spawn camping or not spawn camping is another one. Um, I think maybe that's gone by the wayside. I think we've all agreed to spawn camp in 2022. But there were times where you could get into more of a debate about that. But I think that if there's no room to make decisions, then there's no room to have debate. And in a game where you don't have to make decisions that affect yourself and other players, I think that's a strength, a difficult to grasp strength of Planetside.
I would agree. I would also say that those debates, those decisions will be there regardless. They'll just be
Hmm.
about different things.
Okay.
There's no, I don't think you'll ever get everybody on the same
Mm-hmm.
wavelength.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not
Yeah.
not to some pristine degree. That's some sort of romanticized ideal. But I agree that having these sorts of sort of like interpersonal conflicts,
Right.
or discussion points is good as long as it's healthy. I think that there are things that we are maybe like too divisive on, um, especially when it comes to like, okay, how do you play the game, or rather like what is the goal of the game? So like the Sunderer argument, or
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
the spawn camping one, I think is good too. Where those, if you were to somehow fix that, and I'm not
Mm.
sure that you could or should even,
Mm-hmm.
but if you were, I think that there would be plenty of exciting discussions, either between outfits of just like
Mm-hmm.
or talking about meta.
We
There's
find
always going
other
to be a discussion
things.
about balance. Yeah, it's always going to be there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I buy that. I buy that. I buy that. I don't want to tunnel any further into this amazing rabbit trail. This is such an easy evergreen Planetside topic to talk about. Um, we were talking about hot takes, starting with delete heavy assault, which seems to be universally agreed upon. So I look forward to that update. Um, and defense of the pristine light assault class, which is only going to get better. Any other
We're actually
fun hot
moving
takes?
the. Sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
I was interjecting to
Moving
say
the
something
shield
dumb.
over
Go ahead.
to
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Any other, like, fun hot takes before I move on to the next thing?
None worth risking any sort of remaining reputation for.
Fair enough, fair enough. Um, so when we talk about hot takes, like deleting heavy assault, we all see hot takes from ourselves, hot takes from others. When you hear a hot take like that, it's your job to sort the wheat from the chaff. How do you do that? How do you know? How do you hear the truth behind the hot take?
So I think a lot of times it comes down to uh, how reactive the the verbiage is, maybe mostly just how reactive the player seems about a particular change. Especially, so you'll see things like instant feedback the moment an idea of an idea is unveiled.
Knee jerk.
That noise, right? Knee
Yeah,
jerk noise.
yeah.
Um, Other times you'll see strong bias come in from players who have legitimate amounts of like loads and loads of experience. We're going on 10 years. I mean, you want to get a college degree a couple times over. If that course was in Planetside too, you'd have some some really
PhDs.
yeah, yeah. Um, so some of that though is you kind of just have to be especially diligent to view things from other perspectives when you hear more feedback from just
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
really invested players or players who are invested in particular styles of play. So that's like another thing to kind of watch out for. Other I guess signals of noise would be kind of, so one thing that I see within the community, and it's really interesting to me, is that when a post comes up, usually the first commenter, provided it's not something just totally bonkers, usually the tone of the first commenter will dictate the tone of the majority of posts nested there within.
Hmm.
There is definitely like a mob mentality that kind of runs Reddit, and
Yeah, it's a bit of a
it
Pareto
is
distribution.
it's a what?
Accumulating advantage. It's a law of
Yeah, certainly.
economics where those who have the most will accrue the most; those who have the least will suffer the most. Um, Also in the Bible, I think the Matthew principle is what it's called.
Hmm. The so that sometimes that needs to be kind of taken into consideration too.
Mm,
I feel like some of the some of the best takes can often be found near the bottom.
mm,
Um, not just like openly, you know, uh, upset or whatever, but you'll see uh, players who have like legitimate counterpoints to the popular comment, the one that's up top, but it's just
sure.
not given enough attention because it wasn't there first. It's
Yeah.
now not popular to vote on that particular topic, or it's just not worth your time, or people don't scroll down that far.
Yeah.
There's a lot kind of to that needs to be taken into account when filtering advice.
Yeah.
I think
Or it's
that
more
the
complicated. Like sometimes it's harder to interact
certainly
with a correct, complicated idea than an off, simple one.
that's yeah, no, that's a really good point. Sometimes being witty outweighs being factual
I think
or
always,
correct. Yeah, you think
always.
so?
Better to,
Um,
to do a dull thing with grace than an artful one clumsily. You know.
Interesting. The I think that the most useful forms of feedback are from observation of players actually playing the game.
Mm,
So you'll see, we have plenty of streamers,
mm,
small time, medium time, sometimes large scale, and they all have differing perspectives. Some of that can be very like readily, um, I would say, almost written off when you see how players are certain like performing. So, for example, you're in a squad, playing with your friends or what have you. There's a lot of voice comms going back and forth.
hmm.
You jump in and you toss C4, and then you detonate it. It kills you,
Hmm.
But over on your comms, you say something to the effect of, "Oh, C4 didn't explode again. Game is broken."
Been
It's
watching
like
your
everybody else
streams.
saw, everybody else watched that take place. I don't think it was you, um, but just the like, oh, I need social clout, or like I need to vocalize some sort of uh, I don't know.
Vent your frustration. Tell a story that's more self-soothing than I blew myself up.
Probably. Yeah. And so that
Hmm.
sort of thing is, I see it, like, oh, players they'll fight somebody and then they'll dip around a corner and it maybe die.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's due to lag, sometimes it's not due to lag, and you see people blame it on lag
Yeah.
as the no, you're actually literally in line of sight. Like we saw that on stream. Um, s- so I think the integrity of some of those players who offer feedback, even maybe under those circumstances, or maybe as a whole, it can kind of be, it's compromised.
Yeah.
So that the feedback becomes less valuable when I see that you're not telling the truth,
Mm.
or you're contorting the truth for the sake of a public perception.
Hmm.
You don't want to be viewed as having done something wrong, and to me that speaks like, oh, okay, you're trying to fit in, or you need some sort of approval from this sort of social group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to paint everybody with that sort of brush, but you see it often enough that it sends off little red flags and saying like, okay, well, this is like,
Yeah.
is this
Yeah.
legit, or is this an experience that you have had that you are now, I don't know,
Totally.
kind of making louder than it is?
Man, you're talking. You're narrating my Planetside streams, man. So like, I have this one person in my community. Shout out to Kai. He always calls my bullshit. Always calls my bullshit. If I make one of those little false comments, he'd be like, "You blew yourself up." I'm like, "Shit, you're right. Thank you, Kai." And one of the things he loves to do too is because one of the people in my community who I like to play with is an enthusiastic vehicle player, and he'll join my squad. That's Henry. I'm shouting out, and he'll pick me up in his Valkyrie, and we'll go shoot stuff, or pick me up in his Harasser, and we'll go shoot stuff. And then he'll get my KD nice padded. It's great because I mean the guy knows what he's doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just riding along and shooting. It's a very simple task. And Kai would be like, "Oh, we got the vehicle players in here to pad your KD again, huh?" Shit. He's right. He's right.
Something else that I think is kind of interesting to observe is you will the session that you had last is sometimes the one that you remark upon.
Mm.
And if that session did not go well, game can suck.
Hmm.
Or you can, you'll find a bunch of flaws with it. When the game
Yeah.
goes well, the perception is different. I think you see this with like Osher, upon release was kind of a good one, to where
Mm.
many players are like, oh, this is so good, it revitalized, or like it made me remember 2012, and the battles felt massive, and there's vehicles and everything. And if you had that experience,
Hmm.
you uh, that's kind of like what was
Yeah.
shown outwardly.
And I did.
If
Personally, I did. So I resonate with that.
But if you had a poor experience, then that's the one that kind of sticks with you. That's the one that you kind of like have vocalized publicly, even if not all of your experiences were like that.
Hmm.
I think you see it with new players too. Just like, okay, the first time they drop in, if they have a good experience, they stick with the game. If they don't have a good experience, and they bail, why not?
Hmm.
Game stocks overpowered, pay to win, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you dropped in with like into a good fight, or if you dropped in with a good squad, or an outfit that was talking to you the entire time, totally different experience.
Yeah.
And even if functionally the game is the same, maybe even they were in like similar fights, had different encounters, the way that they perceive those things is fundamentally different because of the surrounding, or like the environment
Sure.
at the time.
Sure.
So some of that stuff is worth paying attention to as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll call out streamers who are just like, being really needly about certain things, and
Mm.
then even just like speaking to them like in a stream will kind of like put them back into baseline,
I'll calm them down.
because you can, yeah, because you can offer like a different perspective
Mm.
too. And I'm not trying. Well, I guess I am trying to like contort things, positively,
You
skew
also
things,
are
and
kind of like the philosopher king come out of the mansion on the hilltop. So people feel like they're being given the attention of the game when you show up in the stream.
maybe I don't know, but yeah. So all this factors into the
Okay.
data collection.
Yeah. Cool. Cool, man. So hot takes of other folks. Okay. When I mentioned to you delete heavy assault and you agreed with me about it, we all kind of had like a smirk on our face, like kind of self knowing that, yeah, like I do think this, but also I realize it's kind of preposterous. How do you see through to the truth of your own hot takes?
I think that it has to be balanced by other perspectives. So
Okay.
I enjoy our conversations
Mm,
because you don't necessarily have the same sort of gameplay, I guess, intentionality that I do. Like, you'd like the infantry stuff for the most part. I've seen you
yeah,
enjoy other aspects of the game as
it's
well.
mostly infantry.
Um,
You're right.
Same thing with like Kamikaze, or even just like some of the other like more hardcore streamers. That perspective is refreshing to some degree, even if I don't agree with everything that's going on, because
Hmm.
it helps at least inform the perspective of other players.
Sure.
So you have to take into consideration.
This is a
I
real
make it a
thing
point.
that's happening that I don't see when I play. That kind of idea.
Absolutely,
Hmm.
that's very important, because I do play the game differently. I
Hmm.
am very much go with the flow. Sort of like I like doing the suboptimal, stupid stuff, because that's how I envision Planetside 2, kind of like the intention of the game,
Hmm.
as it was,
Like playing engineer and
the spirit of it.
speedrunners.
Uh, man, I need a rematch. I swear I
Yeah.
could do better.
Yeah. Me too, man.
Um, but yeah, it's something that you have to be on the lookout for. It's very easy to get caught up in your own perspective,
Hmm.
uh, and yeah, it just needs a, even like hearing takes from the community. Like, always have a healthy um, dose of skepticism whenever you're offered any sort of feedback or
Hmm.
advice, or
Hmm.
anything, and that should be doubly so for your own personal perspective.
Sure. Sure. Do you have any like old hot takes from before you worked on the game, maybe from your time as a more of a content creator that you have abandoned since?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to it.
Hmm,
I think that time kind of blurs a lot of things together.
no doubt.
Been working on this game for what? Oh, is it going on? Is it going on 7 years?
That feels right. You
Nah,
started in
6 years. It
2016?
started in 2016. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
6-ish.
Six. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
did a
man.
little bit of contract work prior to as well, but
Right.
um, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if I have anything that drastically changed. I think there was mostly like reality setting in. My Everybody had, you go on Reddit, right? Actually, there was a post up talking very, very recently. It's still probably up. You can find it. With
I
a,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
is that where you're going? That
I
direction?
almost brought it up because it was such a great post.
I think it's a good one, because from an outside perspective, and I think actually that, say, April 2016 is when that was posted. I think I wasn't like, I started in October. Like, I
Hmm.
started in earnest in October 2016.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that people think they have a lot of good ideas, myself included. But when rubber meets the road, you have to contend with all sorts of different circumstances,
Hmm.
which includes sometimes confronting the reality of how much control you actually have
Hmm.
over the direction. I think many things can change about a game, and at the same time, nothing can change.
Yeah.
I don't
So
know.
would you then agree with the top comment? Here, let me briefly read it to you. Uh, so the post, the title of the thread, I think we're thinking about the same one. Tell me if we're not, by the way. Over 6 years ago, dot, 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 what happened? It's a Reddit post you made back in April 2016. Um, Top comment. It's pretty simple actually. Easy to point out the issues from the outside when you don't know how or what would take to fix them. Just like everyone else in this community, Rel once saw all the problems, but when he joined the team, you start realizing they either can't be solved at all or would require an unreasonable trade-off to fix.
The
Fair?
trade-off to fix. That's the big one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when you have to balance the development of the actual game to keep people players interested, we ride on a wave of population spikes. Each update, bring more players back, then they leave.
Mm-hmm.
When that is the cadence, it is difficult to cease everything that you're doing and focus really hard on this big one one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because reworking a lot of the systems that might need to be reworked, and who knows if they would actually pay off, is a massive undertaking that has potential for no return on investment.
Sure.
That is a difficult pill to swallow for I don't know, just trying to keep a game moving the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could probably go on about this too because there's more to it than that. Or actually, there's some comments below talking about transparency, how everybody thinks that they want it.
Right. This is such a great comment thread. And this guy, Dry Method, made a few really, I think, intelligent responses. And one of them was about how people say they want transparency, but actually they don't.
Totally true, and
Mm.
it's really unfortunate. I would, so I view myself as somewhat more candid, maybe perhaps more candid than I should be from
Mm.
a person who is in my position. But
Okay.
I've always tried to keep like a really honest, just like, hey, everybody, this is what's happening currently, sort of like perspective, because it's grounded, and I think that people appreciate that.
Hmm.
However, if you, it is things become more complex, um, and you mentioned simple responses being just easier to kind of like it's an easier story to tell or read or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
um, but when things get more complex, they're just more difficult to convey
Yeah.
outwardly, and also players become less sympathetic to that because they can't necessarily connect to that story in the same way.
Hmm.
And a story, I mean, is probably not the correct word here, but there's always some level of, I guess, spin, maybe is an even worse term,
Hmm.
that's that is like that you need in order to make the message palatable to the community. It can be
Okay.
100% truthful, um, and in my respect, like it should be.
Hmm.
I I have a very negative, visceral reaction to like any time that that it is suggested that I say something less than my personal truth,
Mm.
um, which can happen any sort of like time you're dealing with I guess the community outwardly. You need to be
Right.
very specific about your responses,
Right.
uh, or else you can make problems worse.
Hmm.
I'm a professional at doing that personally.
Well, I
Very
appreciate
good
that
at
you err on the side
tending
of
the fire.
honesty. It makes our conversations more fun.
More fun for us in the moment, less fun for the people who watch it on Reddit later,
I
or
think
just
we'll all have
snippets
lots of fun.
taken out of context. Yeah.
Different
Less fun
kinds of
for
fun.
for me dealing with everything else
Oh yeah.
at work after the fact. But no, I would say that yeah, it is being transparent is difficult because what players really want is to hear what they want to hear,
Mm.
and there is certainly a level of forgiveness, like there's some wiggle room involved, especially if you've kind of like delivered on enough things. Players can kind of back down and say like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll give you a
Trust in the
pass for
trust
now.
bank.
Right. But when things are kind of going have been bad for a while, then even if it's for legitimate reasons,
Hmm.
conveying that outwardly is is not something that you would find the forgiveness in. It would just be inflammatory, if anything. So there's times
Sure.
to speak, and there's times to kind of like hold the cards close to your chest. Um, one example of this, uh, and this is a really docile example,
Mhm.
but when we had, let's see, we had issues with Connery, just that server having latency issues, and we were trying to get to the bottom of it,
Mhm.
like nonstop for I guess multiple months. I think it was going on 3 months.
Sheesh.
Um, the Connery server in particular was kind of like falling over. Players were having massive lag spikes. Big ordeal toward the start of the year, or the first and second quarter.
Mhm.
And um, any time we tried to share something cool, just like share with the community, like, hey, this is what we're working on,
Yeah.
it was met with a derailment of the conversation, because X, Y, or Z issue hasn't been resolved yet. In this case, it was the Connery issues, right? Affecting a
Mhm.
lot of players, high impact. They don't want to hear that you're working on other stuff when I'm suffering, right?
Mhm.
This is sort of like, because it comes across as tone deaf.
New content in the
That
store, by the way.
exactly. So
Mhm.
we had to like postpone some of the messaging that we wanted to do. Therefore, less transparency,
Mhm.
because it isn't talking about the thing that's topical, despite constantly putting out messages like, saying like, hey, we're working on this issue. Please submit this information.
Mhm.
Um, Ultimately, it was at least, we would continue to get peppered with messages, as if we weren't doing anything. The message had
Mm.
already been stated that, like, hey, keep doing this thing. But if that's not the only thing that you are constantly addressing, then it comes across again as tone deaf.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
I'm
that
sure
sort
the
of like,
reality. Sorry, continue.
no, no, go ahead. I'm talking too much.
Oh, I was gonna say that, and I'm guessing that, I mean, this is one of the things that gamers, I think, easily fall into is they tend to feel intuitively that the entire company should be working to resolve whatever they see as the top priority. The reality is not everyone can work on the Connery server issues. Like, there are other people who aren't working on that, who can't work on it, who need something else to do, and have other things that they were trying to do anyway. And of course, you want to be able to say tell good news about, you know, we're dealing with this implant problem, or we've resolved this little bit of geometry on Hassan or whatever, man. Um, so I get it.
Yeah, there's definitely. I wonder what I mean, knowing now, like how games are actually made.
Yeah,
It is that perspective. I've just never, like, I don't understand why people don't get it.
simple.
Like,
It's simple,
it's
man.
fun.
Occam's razor. People just go for what's simple. Don't you think?
Maybe, yeah. Where I don't know.
Your strength, Rel, is that you're an overthinker. You're able to take this massive game of Planetside, keep it all in your head, be like, "Oh, what about this?" Hmm. But that's not everyone is that way. Not everyone who plays Planetside is that way. Not everyone who talks about Planetside is that way. And I mean, I see it all the time, man. There is elegance in simplicity, but also a kind of foolishness at times. And maybe
Right.
I'm just sort of downplaying your curiosity, but I feel like that's my take on that particular problem.
Nah, I just wish, I guess, that there was some way to offer more insight to. I mean, we've even publicly stated, like, while the Connor, just to get back to the Connor issues,
Yeah,
while we're doing this investigation, that doesn't preclude other members of the team from working
yeah,
on, we're still working towards other goals.
sure.
However, just like doesn't sink in, and I wonder if it's because, that's just like, I don't want to hear that. Fix the game. It's kind of a, yeah,
Yeah,
that's one of the barriers of transparency. I feel like is,
yeah.
yeah.
Maybe it's sort of like this, like a metaphor, perhaps. So my wife was sick recently. She had like a bronchitis. She's feeling better now, but it sucked for a little while. And she's a terrible sick patient. She's a massive extrovert. Every single day she's up and out doing stuff. So being sick is bad enough, but having to cancel all of her plans, that's the really bad part of being sick for her. And I was trying not to get sick too, so we kind of tried to keep our separate space. And but she was feeling sick. She was suffering. And most of our interactions had to be while she was in pain about what she was dealing with, because she needed my help, first of all. And second of all, because she had enough going on, enough pain in her life, that me talking about, hey, why did you leave the dishes out? Or like this other little thing, or you should know about X, or hey, I had to do this. It's not actually to our aggregate benefit for me to share this in a way I normally would when the party I'm relating to is suffering.
That's legit. Yeah. At the same time, stop reading the news. You know, if you're, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. Um, yeah, it makes it tricky because you're trying to cater to everyone at the same time. So when you
Mhm.
have a subsection that is, suffering, Connery in this example,
Yeah.
uh, you're put in this awkward position to where there's like, we want to show off cool stuff to, the however many percent of other players that exist within the game, but
Yeah.
now you've created this sort of like barrier to us
Mhm.
doing that just by virtue of that perspective of like, no, focus on me. I need, you need to acknowledge us.
That's
And
hard,
we
man.
tried to balance it out as best we could. But aspects like that are what can prevent, I think, transparency, not just in our game, but others
Yeah.
as well.
If you could take Here's a new question that just popped into my head. If you could take either the community feedback and face of Planetside part of the job as your job going forward, or the part of the job where you're leading the design of the future of Planetside, which would you prefer?
Um, I would want to make the game.
Okay.
Yeah, cast aside the player feedback,
Yeah.
if it came down to that, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm asking because in my own career, I have a technology background. But I've been moving more and more into people kind of things, people kind of focused work. Um, so I have a foot in both worlds, kind of customer relationships and actually the technology that makes it all work. I just wonder about that because you put so much time and energy and thought into these community interactions, and I don't know. Like, I think there's a part of me that's always been surprised that someone else hasn't popped up and started doing that as the team's gotten bigger, as the team's gotten busier. Um, you're still with us. You're still popping on my podcast. You're still dropping in on streams. It makes me wonder, like, are you like, do you have your feet in both those worlds? Is that like a forever thing, or is this just a meeting the moment thing? What do you think?
I think that some of it is circumstance. I am I've been playing the game for quite some time.
Yep.
Started a couple weeks after launch. Um, so the perspective that I have on the game is like leans itself to conversations with players where it's just easier to speak on those things.
Hmm.
I also like being so I I myself am an introvert, yet the I don't find these sorts of conversations especially draining. However, I do know that there are people on the team who have no interest in
Yeah.
being like forward facing,
Hmm.
and I think that when you're forward facing, you also shoulder more of the blame, like a disproportionate amount of the blame. And we've
Yep.
seen that with anybody who's at the head of
Hmm.
or makes is the face of the team, and that is a burden, I would say, that I would rather shoulder than anybody else on the team.
Hmm.
Uh, it's I don't know if it's the that's me trying to protect my people to some degree.
Why is that
It's
important?
because people are important. People are probably the most important thing, of a of a studio. Uh,
That's something that Carter
yeah,
said when I interviewed him. He said, "People, not projects."
hmm,
That
that's
was
good.
really
Yeah,
fascinating. Really cool guy. Really wonderful conversation.
word. Yeah, no, Carter is the best.
He has nice things to say about you.
He does, and I appreciate him for it. Yeah. The one thing that I kind of want to quickly get back to is
Okay.
you mentioned casting aside the or rather I mentioned casting aside the player interactions versus or the
Yeah.
interaction
Versus
with the
the
community or the leading the game.
yeah.
I do think that if so the player stuff is, to me, it's almost icing on the cake, to where like I enjoy engaging in those sorts of things because I know that the players receive some value from it.
Hmm.
However, I also know that if I sat down and never spoke to the community again, I would still be making the game, and the game would still be moving forward, and there'd be thousands of players who are actively enjoying it.
Hmm.
Um, so it's an interesting position to be in there too, because I know that we are deriving some value from this interaction. I know the people watching, however many end up viewing this after the fact,
Hmm.
will have gained some sort of perspective from it, and there's a benefit there. However, realistically, at the end of the day, you could probably cast aside all of that and just make a game, focus on making a game, and it would keep going.
Okay.
Maybe that's sort of like that, one of those transparent things that people don't want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting one. Yeah. So this is like, I think icing on the cake is the perfect phrase for it. Um, if we're looking for a minimum viable product in terms of what the people at this studio are doing, this does not need to be in it. Yet it is. Yet it is.
Do you want to know
I'm
why?
grateful. I'm grateful. It makes it way more fun to cover Planetside, I'll say.
Yeah, it's I do think that this is it's not it's not my game. It's our game. The
Hmm.
community matters to that degree. It could very easily be my game. Just like doing stuff without feedback, right?
Yeah.
But in order to move us forward in a way that I think more players can get on board with, there is some value in seeing those perspectives, because like I mentioned earlier, I need that to help balance my own. The game
Sure.
would probably be different were it just some dark corner somewhere being developed.
Right.
It might be out of touch.
Mm.
I totally think, just from my personal experience, that thousands of players would still be able to play it every day and still be happy.
Hmm.
However, it would be a different experience.
Would it be
But
worse or better or neither?
we'll never know.
Mm. Okay. Okay. You just said that it's not your game. That reminds me of another thing Cardo said is that once a game is released, it belongs more to the community, really, than to any big brain designer who made it from the beginning. In many ways, I thought that was pretty interesting insight for him to share. Um, what do you say to people who do think of Planetside 2 as your game, and especially in a negative sense?
I feel like um, there has definitely been a perception that I'm building a game that is like for me, you know, um, or on the other side of it, that devs don't play their games,
Mm,
therefore like, you're detached, obviously, because of the
the,
X, Y, or Z
the two
decision.
extremes.
Right, right, right. And to that end, the extreme negativity is quite often noise, because I know where it lives. Also, extreme positivity too, like the white knighting for developers, and that sort of thing can go the
Hmm.
other direction very quickly,
Mm,
to where it's just fluff and forgivings, and that's not healthy either, just from a
hmm.
development standpoint. It's I'm glad people like that are willing to defend the dev team. I want more of those people kind of existing, rather than the ones who are the
A little
opposite.
bit of sugar to counter
But
the salt.
exactly, yeah. So everything is kind of in a balance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, man. Well, let's just wrap this up with a few fun personal questions then. What are you playing these days outside of Planetside, man?
So little time to actually play games.
Hmm.
Ridiculous.
So what you make
Uh,
time for must be what do you make time for? Is there anything?
so I sunk more than 3 maybe 500 hours into Valheim.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
is very good. Is very good. And then I
Did you
got into
finish
like
it?
modding. Finish it.
Yeah.
It's actually not done yet. So like
Have
even
you killed
the
all the
last
bosses that have
boss,
been released?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Modding it, huh?
spoilers. It's what's that?
Sorry, continue, please.
Oh no. Yeah. I have been modding it. Just easy stuff. I think it's been more educational for me. Learning the C# side of things and just like creating new items that been doing like a little bit of kit bashing with models. I haven't created anything from scratch,
Sure.
though. I know how to do that in Planetside too with our stuff. Just not haven't like forced myself to learn Blender uh, as much as I want to or think I want to.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's been really fun. I like because that's sort of like I get some creative freedom that is low pressure.
Yeah.
And I get to also like address some balance concerns that I have, nitpickings
Yeah.
with as well. Like for example, the torch you hold up. Have you played Valheim?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, when you're holding up a
You
torch,
used
it
to
doesn't
scare
make
out
you
away wildlife, scare away the small mobs. I can't remember what they're called.
right. Yeah, the little graylings and
Yeah, Great.
and boars will run away and necks will run away as well. But one thing that it doesn't do is keep you from being cold
Hmm.
when night sets in. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's weird. So like fixing that is nice, so that way there's like a reason to use the torch before you have cold weather gear. That's kind of fun. Sorry, I'm not gonna go on too much about this,
That's
but
cool. That's cool. But some
it's
low
fun.
pressure design space.
Absolutely,
That's fun. It's a beautiful game.
it's very good.
And it's especially interesting because it's a huge game made by a very tiny team.
I'm waiting for their update to drop and like start fleshing out more. What's taking them so
Yeah.
long?
Hire more devs. Come on, guys. So yeah, like they're like adding more biomes, I guess. That's the thought.
Yeah, yeah. The Mistlands are what they're actively working on because it's
Mm.
unfinished, and hopefully that comes in. And every time a new update comes out, I have to like unbreak all my
Yeah.
mods. So it's annoying, but yeah. So I haven't touched the game. I'm gonna wait till Mistlands comes out and then fix all my stuff and then continue modding.
Word. Anything else you playing?
I'm replaying, vaguely playing, replaying some stuff like Dragon Age Inquisition. I love that game. It is so
Uh,
good. I heard it was panned by Dragon Age players way back when it was
really?
first launched. Yeah, but it has some amazing concepts that are just like a lot of fun, and the decisions are good, and the grittiness of the or like the how how smart the world is designed is very
Hmm.
very cool. I love it. Bioware games in general, I even like Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yeah.
I've loved the crap out of.
Uh,
Yeah, big Bioware fanboy.
yeah, man. Yeah, man. Cool, cool. Um, what kind of gaming media do you consume? Is it just Planetside Reddit, or is there other stuff that you take in for fun?
So I one of our actually the lead of marketing, one of the things that they do each day is kind of like put together all the clips of so when new games are released, trailers and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Actually, in the Navy we called it clips. I don't know what's actually called, but like I had to do the same thing when I worked at the public affairs office and was doing the newspaper on Navy submarine based in London.
Okay.
The like every morning you'd have to like look at all the newspapers and all the stories and then put together a list for like the higher ups, so just so that they can like quickly consume everything that might be relevant for just like daily operations of a military base from like the command down.
Fair enough.
um, Similarly, in my workspace, the like the lead on the marketing team is putting together lists of just competitor news, community,
Ah,
or like stuff about different games within our within Daybreak rather,
Uh
just under
huh.
that umbrella, or things that they've released. So like whenever Quest puts out a new update, get to see all the media
Hmm.
feedback regarding that, and that's like a really easy way for me to look through and say like, oh, okay, this is interesting. I want to learn more about this,
Hmm.
and then it'd be like an article from one of the multitude of gaming websites.
Right.
That's helpful. I'm also really into looking at YouTube videos um, regarding. I follow Force Gaming. He's
Oh yeah.
has some extreme views, I think, on monetization, but aside from that, very knowledgeable.
He's very
I like.
grounded.
He is very grounded.
I like that about
I
him.
Yeah, totally. I still follow Level Cap and watch all of his like this week in
Mhm.
gaming stuff and everything about. It's good to keep a beat on like Battlefield as it's the closest kind of sort of thing that
Right.
we have to a competitor. Um, so that sort of thing, and then I Twitch as well, and yeah, kind of all over the place. I think constantly trying to keep your fingers on the pulse of the industry, even from the tech perspective. So like learning more about like, oh, Nvidia's doing this showcase
Uh huh.
or whatever
Yeah.
is important too. I just try to stay abreast of as much of that stuff as I can, which
Damn.
yeah, yeah,
Sounds like a lot, man. Sounds like a lot.
is a lot.
Yeah. Is there? I find myself wanting to ask you what media you consume as a purely guilty pleasure, gaming or non gaming.
D&D podcasts.
Ah,
I'm big on D&D.
really? Do you play it all, or just
It's
mostly listen?
um so I do play, not often enough because it is incredibly difficult for me to find games that I enjoy
Hmm.
with people that I can reliably have consistent groups with. And
Hmm.
then also I really like to DM, but don't have
Ah.
many I don't have many chances to do that
Oh my
either.
god.
Yeah, I was actually this morning and yesterday writing custom campaign setting and that sort of thing, and just like some like variant rules for things that I'm partial to that aren't in normal D&D and that sort of thing. Game design from that
Of
perspective,
course, about to say, like, it
it
makes
permeates my
sense.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. And then I've been really digging. I constantly listen to video game music stuff that
Huh.
is actually I find myself going back to like Mass Effect Andromeda, or like actually all the Mass Effect soundtracks and Dragon Age, and then
Mhm.
other various gaming soundtracks as well. It seems to be sort of like the soundtrack or the playlist of my life at this point.
Hmm.
I've discarded much of the other music or just don't listen to it that often. So
Hmm.
between that and podcasts about nerdy stuff, I think that's where I live right now.
That's cool. That's cool, man. I'm so enjoying the image of Rel the Dungeon Master. You have no idea.
It's a cruel world.
Uh-huh.
I'll tell you what. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Are
I
you
really
are y
like
Go ahead.
I like the thought that not everybody is a hero. That's
Mm,
something that really appeals to me. That just the world around you is moving, and quite frankly, you're kind of at whims to your circumstance.
mhm.
You choose how you want to respond and like move through that. But you know, um,
You're not
that's sort
entitled
of like
to a W.
exactly, yeah. I like choice. Choice matters a lot to me.
So a bit of a player killer DM, huh?
I mean, there have been instances that have gotten close. I've killed plenty of NPCs that I've used to kind of like buffer player parties and that sort of thing.
Sure,
But
sure, sure. Awesome, man. Okay. Last question. This is more of a philosophical question. Um, do video games matter? Why or why not?
so yes, absolutely, is my take on that. It's a medium to consume, much like uh, other forms, except this one is interactive, and it goes depending on the game far beyond. Like it has far-reaching implications beyond just you and even the people who are in the same like lobby or whatever. Communities are built around it, which happens in other forms of media too. If you really like jazz music
Yeah.
or what have you, you can find ways to bond with others over that. And I think
Hmm.
that's kind of one of the the values that games has too. Is that players can use it as a common language to I don't know, like sometimes it's you can like reflect yourself in the world, which is empowering
Hmm.
to people. Sometimes it's a way to relax and even detach yourself from the world.
Yeah.
So it's a therapeutic measure in that respect. So
Hmm.
there's so many arguments for games being amazing that I think in the future to kind of extrapolate, um, that's what life will be
Hmm.
is is games. Hopefully, I hope that they're designed um, by people who value the human experience and like just or I mean or even just human life, honestly. Um, but it won't be long before we're probably all chilling in VR space, kind of just like talking to one another. Roll your
Oh
eyes
man.
now, but it's not even that far away.
I'm pretty skeptical about that personally, man.
Yeah. Have you ever? Okay. Well, I know this is a question for
Actually,
me, but it
that's a
should be
fair
for you.
retort. I haven't actually ever used a VR headset, so that's
Okay.
on me. Haven't taken the plunge.
Yeah. As soon as it becomes more commonplace, easy enough to set up and throw on, and sort of ubiquitous, less expensive
Sure.
as well. Like once that happens, there's there's very little standing in the way of that being kind of a common mode
Hmm.
of communication, of just interaction between other players. It's already starting to creep in. Uh, there's just more friction involved.
Yeah.
So we'll
That.
see. Technology is crazy.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely, man. I mean, who would have thought we'd be using mice and keyboards to do all this? Still 40 years later or whatever. Um, you said that you think in the future most of our lives are going to look like what video games are turning into. What's that mean?
I feel like okay, so you remember the stigma back in, I mean, even just as late as like the 1990s that, or I don't know, maybe it still exists. That gamers are basement nerds, and like
Yeah, I
they
remember very
can't
well.
socially interact, whatever, whatever. Like
Hmm.
now you fast forward even just like 10 years, totally changed the paradigm
Hmm.
where games are now a way for people to communicate with one another. It is a way for you to reach more of the world around you,
Hmm.
just by virtue of just like again that sort of like common language.
Hmm.
If I really like Bioware games and somebody else really likes Bioware games, we can now talk about something that's you know we have some sort of commonality,
Hmm.
and in finding that sort of like that the common uh, that something that is personifies the right word, that makes people more pers- personal. I don't know, some sort of
Connected?
connection. Yeah, yeah, connected to another
Yeah.
person. That is that has
It's like a
such
contact,
far
having
reaching. Yeah.
contact with other people and not not contact that feels trivial.
Mm,
Like not checking out at the grocery store. Like something a little more involved.
right. So when our normal means of communication uh, becomes the games that we play, you pop on, talk to people, chat with your friends. You've never met
Hmm.
these people before, yet they're as real as anything else. That we can look forward to more of that in the future, um, more closely intertwined. Well, I could be wrong. Maybe a meteor hits us tomorrow, and then we're all
Yeah.
who cares? But I don't see it going the other direction.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to imagine it could. I totally agree with you, man. I guess the part of me, the deeply contrarian devil's advocate inside of me is remembering the voices of my parents when I grew up in those 90s you described, saying, "Oh, well, video games are something you grow out of. It's like a toy. It's for children." Um, all the time you spend playing video games, if you could have spent that doing something productive, just think about where you'd be. Um, Yeah, digital connections are great, but they don't compare to face-to-face connections. Shared experiences digitally are great, but doesn't compare to meeting someone in person. Like these are the these are the kinds of perspectives that are easily poo-pooed by gamers, I think, but they actually are still held by the majority of people.
Very likely. But I mean, how many organizations? Thanks to the pandemic, thank you, COVID. I guess people are at home now and being forced to converse through digital means, or at the very least, they've gotten a taste for it.
Yeah,
Things are calming down now, at least in the U.S. So
fingers crossed.
uh, yeah, but I think that is probably and again, that's only the last 2 years. That's
Mhm.
that's probably done wonders to kind of like move us forward in a direction to where that stigma kind of gets moved aside. One thing that isn't considered is like mobile games. A lot of players, a lot of people who even don't consider themselves gamers play on mobile.
Yeah,
Massive, massive, incredibly large
yeah,
market, way larger than PC even. It's and that's like the hidden gamer, right? That's the gamers who don't know they're gamers. Uh, Yet they're also like sending gifts on Farmville or whatever gotcha game is around now
yeah,
to their friends or whatever, like trying to rope them into a so that they can progress their stuff.
yeah.
It's everything is interconnected, and it's exciting and scary, and who knows how it'll be in just 2 years from now.
Amen. Couldn't put it any better myself. Well, Rel, thank you for taking the time talking to me about Outfit Wars, Planetside, and life. It's always so enjoyable when I get to talk to you.
I love being here, dude.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. Look forward to it. Thanks, Rel.
Word. See ya.